I'm Vice President and Senior Spokesman for the Int'l Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
It's a popular notion in Christianity that the war of all wars, the end times war, involves the destruction of 2/3 of the Jews towards the coming of the Messiah. Is that right?
There are a lot of Christian Bible teachers. They are pro-Israel. They love Israel, but they teach that the worst for Israel is still ahead of us. That during the Great Tribulation, 2/3 of the Jews are going to die. This is, of course, trying to interpret both Zechariah chapter 13 and Ezekiel chapter 5, which are both the 2/3 judgment chapters. But at the Christian Embassy, we teach that in this 70th year of celebrating Israel's anniversary, 7 years of its modern rebirth, we've seen a pattern that even though Israel has wars, God delivers, and the country is always has victory and is heading ever upward. And because we believe those 2/3 judgments, or what Jeremiah called the time of Jacob's trouble, they all happened in Israel's exile. That what happened in the first century, the violent Roman uprooting of the Jewish people in 70 AD, and then again in the Bar Kokhba revolt, during that time period, Josephus and other sources tell us that 2/3 of the Jews in the land of Israel died then, and then the 1/3 remaining went into exile, just as Zechariah 5 says. And it says, God says there, this is the worst. I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'll never do it again. And this is the worst I'll ever do to you, and I'll get it out of my system. The prophets also in Isaiah and Jeremiah speak of how that punishment, that curse, would be doubled. And you even have the Holocaust in Germany, where 2/3 of the Jews of Europe were massacred. And those act like bookends on the time of Jacob's trouble. Jacob's troubles were always in exile, but now that the Jewish people are back in the land and Israel's restored, we've entered into a time of favor and the judgment to come, and the dark side of prophecy that even the rabbis talk about, the darkness before the dawn. It's about God's judgment on the nations for the way they always mistreated the Jewish people in exile, and we believe this is a year we can celebrate with Israel. The worst is behind her, and I'll tell you, most Christians believe this way, and they don't accept, even though it's a popular Bible teaching, they do not really buy into this thing of 2/3 of the Jews still have to die. We don't accept it.
How common is the belief that of the opposite, that the Jews do have to die?
The reason some Christians believe this is because they misinterpret Bible prophecy by wanting to cram every bad thing mentioned in the Bible into the last 7 years of the tribulation, and they don't have this ability to look at history, redemptive history, the history of the Jewish people, and be able to check some things off. And it's just a matter of bad interpretation. That's the only reason I can give.
Is this to say that there won't be an end of times war, an apocalyptic war, which will precede the coming of the Messiah?
It doesn't mean that Israel is totally scot-free. We've already seen from 70 years now the pattern that wars come, and yet Israel emerges victorious every time. God delivers. The IDF, thank God, is there to help defend the country. And even if God, the prophets are clear that all nations will come up against Jerusalem, but he will deliver Israel. He'll be a goel and a deliverer and a redeemer for Israel, and Israel is not destined for another mass annihilation back in the land. They've been brought back for redemption, not annihilation.